What is going on, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the 5-Minute Debate. I am joined by special guest Nate Polvogt. Nate, how's it going?
Oh, it's going, man. It's still 100 degrees here. It's almost 8 o'clock, so that's not ideal. But, other than that, everything's going wonderful. Just great.
Just casually melting away.
Yeah, no big deal, man. No big deal.
Yeah, for anybody that's not familiar with you and your work, why don't you obviously, let everybody know where they can find you, what you're working on, that sort of stuff.
So, obviously, you can find me on Twitter at JanateJackFF. That's a play on my name, my wife's name, and my kid's name. I'm not eating anybody. I didn't eat anybody.
It looked like before you capitalized the N.
Yeah, that was a real thing I didn't realize. And I created that handle before I thought anybody would ever care who I was. So, but you can find my work in between media at IBT_media on Twitter. My wife, Jen, at Jen Polvogt on Twitter, are launching a new deal called 32 and 32 Fantasy Football. It's going to be a 32-minute podcast where we hit all 32 teams once a week for all of your redraft and some dynasty needs. And yeah, you can find me on all the socials. I'm not hard to find.
When you say, I'm pulling up notes here as I'm talking and typing. When you say 32 minutes, is it like the 5-minute debate where it's never actually been 5 minutes?
No, we're going to try and hit exactly like 32, maybe max 33 minutes, but we want to keep it. We want to keep it short. Simply like you can listen to it on your commute.
Okay.
You don't have time to listen to like all of the like hour, 2-hour shows or watch all the TV. We're going to give it to you really quickly, really easily, and we're going to have some riders in addition during the season. So
yeah, that'll be fantastic. No, I am looking forward to that. But yeah, so again, pumped to have you on. We're getting a bunch of big guests for the 5-minute debate, and obviously thrilled to have you be a part of this group. With John Bauer, Michelle Hutchinson, and everybody else.
It feels weird to be mentioned in that group, but I appreciate it.
Absolutely, dude. If you guys aren't aware somehow at this point, we are talking Austin Ekler versus Zeke Elliot. I am going to be debating Austin Ekler. If you watch any 14P stuff, I make it a point to fit him into almost every episode. And then Nate obviously is debating Zeke Elliott. So I got my timer here. I'm ready to go. Kick it off, Nate. What do you have for Zeke Elliott?
So, there were issues last year and there were concerns, and he bit a lot of people who had rostered him. But that's not going to happen again this year. He's still an elite running back. He's still young. He was still, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but I think he was like PPR running back 13 last season, even for as bad as he seemed to be. And Dak's coming back. And that's the biggest thing for me with Zeke is that I just see both names in front of me.
Yeah,
with Zeke, like you've got Dak coming back. I felt like there's a lot of pressure on Zeke last year to carry that offense because Ben DiNucci and Andy Dalton aren't exactly like the bastion of Pro Bowl quarterback that he had before.
Right.
Dak comes, and I think that's going to take pressure off of Zeke, and he can go back to doing what he did, which is pounding the rock. And I was kind of surprised looking through some of his sleeper stats today. I mean, he gets involved in the passing game almost as much as Austin Ekler does. So having Dak back is going to change that dynamic. And I mean, again, there you go. I mean, I think that he's going to have a phenomenal season. I think we can forget about the concerns from last year. I think that he's sitting somewhere between 6, 7, 8, right in that range for me as far as running backs go.
Yeah. So before I get into, the very few, and I want to stress that there's very few things to poke holes in, with Zeke this season, and admittedly so, and I mean rightfully so. But for Austin Ekler, for me, the reason I am taking Austin Ekler is I think he is better set up for fantasy success because of the competition around him, his role in the offense, and the types of touches he receives. So for me, again, he's battling with Justin Jackson, the ghost of Joshua Kelly, and Roundtree, who I didn't even bother to learn his first name. So
I think it's Larry.
Larry sounded right, but I didn't want to be wrong.
So I can be wrong.
So Larry Roundtree. And here's the thing. Those guys don't worry me. Austin Ekler is a fine running back, but again, we know he doesn't make his hay in the red zone as a touchdown scorer. He's going to see, 100 plus targets almost as a guarantee at this point in his career because they lost Hunter Henry. They replaced him with Jared Cook, who I'm not super crazy about, and it's still only Mike Williams. Austin Ekler is the wide receiver 2 on this team with rushing upside, and that type of that type of player, especially in PPR leagues, is exactly who I want to target over somebody like Zeke, who has a little bit more competition with Tony Pollard, who I think is a better receiver out of the backfield, which did actually eat into Zeke's passing workload last year. Pollard saw 40 targets and up from 20 the previous season. So if his role grows, I think that could knock Zeke down a few pegs, out of that top 5 or 6 consideration, which is where he's being drafted right now.
See, I mean, that's fair, but also I'm going to go back to Dak Prescott.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And Dak Prescott prefers Zeke. He knows Zeke. He's going to continue to go to Zeke, whether it's running the ball or in the passing game, if they're going for those short targets. Having Blake Jarwin back healthy might make me think that they're going to use him a little bit more in the short passing game over Zeke, but I'm not worried about Tony Pollard. I mean, this is Zeke's job. And as long as he can solve the fumble problem, which I think he can, and I'm sure he's been working on all offseason, I'm not concerned about it at all. With Ekeler, I know they want Josh Kelly to be a thing, and that worries me a little bit with Ekeler, but not a lot, I guess, to be fair.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And for me, it's I do think Austin Ekler is going to be safer. He is a guy, I think he has a higher floor than Zeke, because, last season we saw Zeke was less efficient than usual, and that was because of the offensive line injuries.
Right.
But also that offensive line, those guys are continually getting hurt for me. So I don't think they're the typical Cowboys offensive line we think of, 2 years back even.
Right.
Because that offensive line continues to kind of deteriorate. We've seen that efficiency drop. And if he's losing some, again, it's not going to be a lot, like you said, but if he's losing some work to Tony Pollard, who, he has some juice. He has a lot of juice. I think it could, again, just slightly cap the ceiling. He's still an RB1. Let me be very clear about that. I'm very excited about Zeke, but just not at his ADP. I think that's my issue.
And I think that is fair, but I kind of feel the same way about Ekeler. The other concern I have is that offense, they're not a great team.
No, they're not.
And they're in a very tough division.
Yes.
And they're going to be coming from behind a lot, which means they're going to be throwing the ball deep, and that's not Ekeler's bread and butter. So does that affect his passing game? I guess I don't know. It might. It might not.
What I will say for this is I'm looking at his numbers before we close this out, because we just hit the 5-minute mark. The floor for Austin Ekler was, with games of Justin Herbert, 0 games under 10 points, 75% of his games are over 15. That's the kind of consistency I'm looking for in the first round. And again, both of these guys will be consistent, but we pretty much saw Zeke last season. If he wasn't scoring touchdowns, he wasn't, really giving you a lot of big weeks because the passing work was sporadic. So again, I'm excited about both, but if I got to pick, flip a coin, I'm on the Austin Ekler side. Do you have any closing statements for Zeke here?
We can't forget that he was dinged up a little bit last year too.
Yeah.
He got COVID, which we saw what that did. We assume what that did to Cam Newton. There are so many factors. And really, when it comes down to it, this is almost a gut play, because these guys are almost like just right in the same spot.
It really comes down to preference for me. I think that's that's the deciding factor is, do you want a guy that's probably going to be a little bit busier in the pass game, or the guy that's going to produce on the ground?
Right.
What you're deciding. Again, I'm taking the pass catcher. Nate is taking the runner, obviously.
It's really because of that gif where he's eting cereal super fast. That just makes me want to draft him. So
that was all time. When he was a rookie and he brought that out, it was electric.
Oh man,
absolutely electric.
I loved it.
All right, guys. Well, short and sweet, 5-minute debate. Thank you for listening, Nate. Thanks for hopping on, man.
Thanks for having me.
Let everybody know where they can find you again.
At JanateJackFF on Twitter, at IBT_media, and at 32 and 32FF, and at EdgeOFF Chaos on Twitter as well.
You're reachable as hell, man.
Yeah, I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Like, subscribe, do all the things you do when you watch YouTube. I don't know. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.